You know, when this guy starts work, he has got one hell of an in-tray to deal with, hasn't he? You know, with the responsibility that Nils Koppen has been given in terms of sorting out the player trading model, which, let's face it, over the last few seasons has been a bit of a disaster at Rangers. He has got a hell of an in-tray to sort out. First of all, on his in-tray is going to be to sort out the disaster of last summer that Michael Beale has left us with. And I think, you know, if you look at what happened at QPR last season, where Michael Beale's players nearly took that team down and were either injured crocs or underperformers, it is kind of a track record that he seems to leave at every club that he goes to, that he leaves that club in a worse state than what he found it. And that is certainly the case at Rangers. Excuse me. You know, you look at the summer signings that we've made. Jack Butland obviously is the exception to the rule in terms of actual signings, permanent signings. Jack Butland has been absolutely top class, and no doubt he would be someone who does fit that player trading model, who, you know, a couple of years down the line, hopefully not in the near future, could be worth an awful lot of money to the club and be sold on for a massive, huge profit. Adding to that, of course, Abdallah Sima, who is unfortunately just a loan player. Again, he has been successful. However, the rest of his signings have been, well, let's face it, not great at all. £7.5 million on Dessers and Lammers, utterly wasted. £6 million on Danilo. And Danilo, you know, I think may come right in time, but is he being used right? Is he an out-and-out striker? It is a key question. Is he taking enough chances that he's being presented with in games? They are all key questions that need to be asked. You know, Balogun, a short-term fix. You look at, you know, the areas that he failed. Obviously, Kieran Dowell, an injury-prone midfielder who never seems to be available to play. Dujon Sterling, who looks average at best and never gets an opportunity to play because of being behind James Tavernier, Borna Barisic and Ridvan Yilmaz. So, you know, you look at the priority positions that we had in the summer. The wingers never addressed, centre-back never addressed. So Nils Koppen has one hell of an in-tray to sort out. I think one of the first primary jobs that he has to do is finding some way for the club to extricate themselves from the Lammers and Dessers situation. Whether that is to send them both out on loan to buys in the hope that they find some form at another club somewhere else, and that club then wants to part with some money. I don't think we will get anywhere near the £7.5 million back we invested in them. And investing £4.5 million in a 28-year-old who has no development in him and looks like a Park League player most Saturdays or Sundays or Wednesdays or Thursdays or whenever it is he plays, you know. And I heard a podcast earlier saying they had a decent game on Sunday. I really do wonder what game they were actually watching. But you know, Koppen has that to sort out. Not only that, but he has that player trading model to sort out. You know, you look at Rangers' current financial situation, and yes, the club makes a profit. Yes, the club has a turnover of 83 million. Of course, that is decent. But the profit is not great this year, 252,000, which was around the same as what Hearts made. You know, nowhere near the profit that lot from across the city made. And certainly if you look at the top 20 clubs in Europe, nowhere near them. Now, I know, of course, that the SFA deal, appalling TV deal, and the revenues that come into Scottish football certainly count towards that against the revenues that go into La Liga, even into, obviously, into the Premiership and even into the English Championship are higher than what come into Scotland. So Koppen has to sort this out. Now, if you look at our player trading model, we have had too few successes in terms of players being brought in, developed, and then sold on. Calvin Bassey for nearly 20 million, Nathan Patterson for around 14 million, Joe Aribo for around 12 million, are only notable successes of recent times. You know, they're the big money successes. Obviously, other players have gone and been moved on, Billy Gilmore, etc., etc. But Koppen has to sort this out. Koppen needs to come in and from day one, when that is the 2nd of January, hit the ground running. He has one hell of a job to do at this club. Like I said, it is all about generating player income. Now, realistically, for Rangers now going forward, we are going to be in a situation where we do need to really lean on this player trading model if we are to bring into the club enough revenue streams, along with all the other external revenue streams like merchandising, like Edmiston House, like hopefully a better TV deal in the future. But player trading is the way forward in terms of generating income to help the club be, as Dave King insisted in 2018, that this club could be self-sufficient within 2 years, a position we are still not in, a position that we still rely on loans and money from investors. You know, you look at the AGM situation as it going into the AGM, and you look at the situation as it presents itself. And like I said, you know, you look at, for example, that whole financial issue. Like I said, our operating profit was 252,000, which was down from that 5.65 million. Like I said, roughly the same as Hearts. The numbers don't make for great reading, with 16 million in loans outstanding. 13 million of that sum has come from investors, from external sources. So, you know, the money that we are generating certainly is not enough at this moment in time to keep the club running, and is certainly not making us self-sufficient. You know, Dave King's projection, and I know that obviously was set back by the COVID pandemic, that by 2020 we would be self-sufficient. Well, we're now, what, 3 years on from the COVID pandemic, and still are in a position where we are relying on loans from investors to fund the club. So, you know, the player trading model is the way forward, and Koppen needs to sort this out. Now, Koppen is someone who has a track record of being able to identify talent, bring in talent, and develop said talent. That way, obviously, the development of the talent then comes down to the work the coaches do on the training field at Auchenhowie. You know, the work of Philippe Clement, Stefan van der Heyden, Alex Ray, etc. But look, Koppen has a record that would lead us to believe that he is a man with a Midas touch. Well, we certainly hope that he has the Midas touch of being able to turn straw into gold. And we certainly hope that he can turn players into gold. Now, it was interesting. I was reading some articles over the weekend about this guy's track record. And, you know, you look at the Dutch clubs, you look at Feyenoord, you look at Ajax, and you look at PSV Eindhoven. And in terms of, you know, revenue streams, in terms of wages, in terms of player trading, they are in a very similar position to the Scottish clubs, to Celtic and Rangers especially. You know, PSV, Ajax, and Feyenoord are teams that regularly win trophies in their own country, but also compete on the European stage and in Champions Leagues. And yes, okay, they don't win them because, let's face it, beyond the big teams like Barcelona, Real Madrid, Manchester City, Arsenal, Bayern Munich, teams that have absolutely shed loads of money that is coming out of their ears, they can spend ridiculous sums on players. It is not a fair balanced playing field. You're never going to get a position, I don't think, when Rangers will be in a position to challenge the likes of Manchester City, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, or FC Barcelona for a Champions League title. However, we will be in a position, I think, to be very much like the Dutch trio of PSV, of Feyenoord, of Ajax, have been at least able to compete at the group stages and earn sufficient revenue from that. Now, player trading, bringing in players, developing them, will help the performance on the field. Performance on the field is key to not only getting money for the players, but also generating income from competitions. Now, we know, you know, I know that the money in Scotland in terms of the League Cup, the Scottish Cup, and the SPL is pretty much ridiculous and non-existent. Therefore, Europe is the best way to generate said income. Champions League is obviously the major primary competition, and the competition that generates up to 50 to 60 million pounds of income from clubs that compete and are moderately successful in those competitions. So the aim has to be that with Koppen and obviously Tom Taylor, Director of Performance, and obviously as well Philippe Clement, that work can be done to bring in players, to develop them, to enable Rangers to be at least competitive in the Champions League, to generate income from that. We look across the city, and I hate to praise them and I hate to speak well of them, but they're a club that, even though they are an utter disaster in the Champions League, are generating income from not only from the Champions League, but also then from their players who have played Champions League football, then been sold on for vast profits. Look at Jota, for example. So that is sort of the way we need to go. And the Champions League and qualifying for the Champions League is kind of key to that. Now, I know supporters have that attitude that, well, what's the point? We're going to get battered in it. We should be in the Europa League, and I've got some, or the Conference League, and we'll talk about that shortly. But the Champions League and being moderately successful in that Champions League is the way, unfortunately, you have to generate income. If you want your club to be successful, if you want your club to have a long-term strategy where over 5 to 10 years they will develop and become a team capable of qualifying for perhaps the knockout stages in the Champions League, or if they finish third and drop down to the Europa League, can actually win the Europa League, you do need this strategy of appearing in regular European competition, being moderately successful to start off with, to generate income, to bring players in, to develop, to sell on for bigger profit, and you bring that money back into your club, you reinvest. And again, it's a cycle. And the building up of that cash and the building up of that cycle helps the club to succeed in the long run. Now, we heard after we got knocked out of the Champions League, oh, well, the Europa League's more our level. We're now hearing from some fans, and I don't understand this, and I respect your opinion, and thank you. You know, you have the right to that opinion. We all have the right to opinions. Football is a game of opinions. But we're hearing now as well from some fans that, oh, perhaps the Conference League is more our standards. Well, To me, my personal opinion is it's utter humiliation for a club like Rangers to drop from the Champions League to the Europa League and then not be able to succeed in the Europa League and to drop to the Conference League. You know, yes, I hear what you're saying about other teams winning it and not being embarrassed by it. But for me, it is a situation where Rangers this season have not been good enough in Europe because of the situation we are currently finding ourselves in. Yes, we could still qualify for the next round of the Europa League, which I very much hope we do. I don't personally want to be in the Conference League. And if I was Rangers manager, I would play my youth team in the Conference League because I don't rate it at all. It has very little benefit. It will detract from the league competition. It will detract from the cup competition. The focus needs to be on that. The Europa League, the Champions League competition's worth being in terms of income revenue stream and also in terms of prestige of winning or getting to the final of those said competitions. Koppen is someone, like I said, who has that track record. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the players that he has discovered and found for PSV over the years. Now, one of those primary people at this moment in time is a guy by the name of Noah Lang. Now, Noah Lang, some of you may have heard of him. Some of you may not have heard of him. Some of you may remember him from the game against Rangers. Lang is someone who was brought in by Koppen, somebody who his scouting network and his scouting team brought in. You know, Noah Lang is this season has had some injury issues and has missed games. Of course he has. But you look at his record this season, 14 games, 5 goals, 1 assist. That's 6 goal contributions in 14 games. He is someone who has a track record of being very successful, of scoring goals during his time, you know, at PSV Eindhoven. He's someone who, you know, has done very, very well indeed. Add to that Joey Veerman, another player as well that Koppen brought in, who has, again, even though he has that attitude that a lot of fans and people don't like, a bit of an arrogance about him, which Dutch players do tend to have. He has been successful at PSV Eindhoven. Another player who was brought in by Koppen to PSV is someone, as Rangers fans, we probably dread hearing the name of because of the goals he scored against us in their 7-3 demolition of us in the Champions League. That is Ismail Sabari. Sabari is a Moroccan international. He is someone who joined Genk's youth ranks while Koppen was a youth scout at Genk. And then once Koppen moved from Genk to PSV, took Sabari with him. Sabari is only 22 years old, is someone who is developing through the ranks at PSV, and PSV have him tied down till 2028. You know, he scored again in the Europa. You know, he scored some great goals. He scored against Sevilla. He is a good player, and he's certainly someone who, you know, is going to be a profit-making player for PSV Eindhoven in the future. Someone who, again, that Koppen identified, brought in an attacking midfield player. You know, you look at the guy's stats from this season. Again, he's a player who's been slowly used, and PSV rotate a lot. We can see Malik Tillman, who's been successful there as well, but doesn't always play. I mean, look at his stats this season for PSV: 22 games, 6 goals, 2 assists. That's 8 goal contributions from midfield for a player who has only started 38% of games this season. So a player who is definitely emerging, coming through, and will be worth a substantial amount of money for PSV, and also is having an impact for them on the field now. Johan Bakayoko, somebody else you may remember from our time playing against PSV Eindhoven, someone who has been linked with moves to a number of English Premier League teams who are all prepared to pay premium price to secure his services. Bakayoko is 20 years old, came through the Belgian youth ranks at Anderlecht. You know, he's played well. He played well, scoring goals for young PSV. Has now got 8 caps for his country. For Belgium as well. You know, is a quality player. And apparently Brentford bid, it was rumoured, £34 million for this player in the summer, which was turned down. So, you know, they're looking apparently for north of that figure. So this is a player, again, who was identified, brought in for cheap from a youth system. This season in the Eredivisie, 14 games, 3 goals, 8 assists. That's 11 goal contributions in 14 games. Has got 22% goal participation rate. Has played 79% of PSV's minutes. Is a high quality player who, again, will be going for somewhere in the region of 40 to 50 million, but has had a major impact in helping PSV be successful, for qualify for the Champions League. Yes, they will not progress, but they've still made a sufficient amount of cash from that and are in line to obviously return to win the Dutch title. So this is another player, again, that Koppen has identified through his scouts and his scouting networks that he's developed, and the work that he's done. Another player that some of you may have heard of, may not have heard of, is Danish international Joachim Mahler. He is a fullback, wingback, who was persuaded to join Koppen at Philippe Clement's Genk, played for Clement at Genk after only one season with Danish team AAB. He was someone who very quickly settled into the Genk team and was part of their championship winning team. He moved to Atalanta not long after leaving Genk and founded and was again a very substantial transfer fee. He was also part of the Denmark team that reached the Euro 2020 semi-finals. Again, someone Koppen developed, Koppen brought in for cheap and sold on for a huge profit at the end of the day. Two more players that Koppen has identified and brought in to his teams and then sold on for huge profits. Noni Madueke, who is currently with Chelsea. He was someone who spent 3 years in the youth system at Crystal Palace. He joined PSV's youth ranks in 2018 as when Koppen came in. He was fast-tracked straight into the PSV first team and then was sold for £28 million to Chelsea, and is an England under-21 championship winner, European championship winner, under-21 level with England. But again, signed for a small amount, again, sold on for a huge profit. These are all players that Koppen has found, that Koppen has put into the teams, given the coaches, obviously the talent which they then worked with. And I'm not saying that Koppen has obviously developed these players. I'm not saying that he obviously works with them on the field, which he doesn't. But we have a coach, we have a coaching staff that are capable of doing that. We have a coaching staff that are capable of developing players. And, this is a situation that we are in where if Koppen can find this talent and give the likes of Philippe Clement, Stefan van der Heyden, the chance to actually work with these guys and, develop it. He cost PSV Eindhoven 4.5 million. They sold him on for 28 million. This is a massive, huge profit. And this is the way the club, as a club, Rangers need to be looking in terms of making money in the future. Last name to mention, Isaac Babadi, the young guy who's smiling away behind in that luminous yellow training top. Sorry, he's only 18. He's a left winger. He has already though broken in to Peter Bosz's PSV Eindhoven team, having progressed through the B team. He's under contract until 2024, and there is rumours that Feyenoord are looking to put in a substantial bid for him. Again, someone identified by Koppen, brought to PSV by Koppen, and obviously worked with Peter Bosz. Peter Bosz obviously is a very, very good coach. Tygo Land is another one as well at PSV, who again Koppen was brought in and has just burst into the PSV first team. All players that have brought in substantial amounts of money. Now the hope has to be that once Koppen gets his feet under the table at Ibrox, that number one, he sorts out the transfer disasters of last summer that Michael Beale has left us with. That he obviously then finds those players, helps Clement to discover the talent that can be developed, that can help Rangers be successful on the field, and then, as with Batsy, Patterson, Aribo, sold on for vast amounts of money for profit to bring more money into the club to enable us to continue in the cycle of being successful. This club cannot continue to go through the situation now where managers are given a kind of blank check and it's all down to that manager, and suddenly he brings all these players in and it's an utter disaster and the club falls apart. We cannot continue to be stuck in a cycle of 1 to 2 years, sack a manager, bring a new manager brings his players in, he gets sacked, he's gone, and that lot across the city stay laughing at us. Koppen is key to this strategy, and that is clearly what the club are intending for him to do, is to replicate what he has done at PSV Eindhoven, but at Rangers, to bring in those players. And like I said, you can, I think, compare the Eredivisie with the SPL. You can compare Rangers very favourably with Ajax, with PSV, with Feyenoord, all those Dutch teams. We've got a similar revenue turnover. We've got a similar wage budgets. We've got, hopefully, eventually, a similar amount of money we can spend on players. by using this player trading model. This is the way forward, and Koppen is obviously the guy they're hoping can back this up. His track record seems very positive. His track record seems to point to success. Just looking at those players that I've talked about and the amount of money they brought in to this club, to his club, sorry. Let me know what you think of this, and let me know all your thoughts on what we've discussed in this video. Thank you so much for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation, guys. As always, on the way out, if you can smash the like for me, that would be phenomenal. And always remember, we are